The drink. Do Yoon's voice came out as a ragged whisper, his fingers clawing at the polished mahogany bar. Something's wrong with the drink. Treasure David's hand froze mid-polish on a crystal tumbler, her eyes snapping to the man crumpling against her bar. His designer suit jacket hung open, revealing a torso covered in traditional Korean tattoos that told stories of violence and power. The dragon coiling around his throat seemed to tighten as he gasped for air. Her training kicked in before conscious thought. 2 fingers pressed his carotid artery, feeling the erratic, weakening pulse. She tilted his jaw back, scanning his face with clinical precision that had nothing to do with mixing cocktails and everything to do with battlefield trauma centers half a world away. "Sir, look at me." Her voice cut through the lounge's ambient music, steady and commanding. "What did you drink?" His eyes met hers, dark and sharp despite the haze of dying. One hand shot out, gripping her vest with surprising strength for a man whose lips were turning blue. "My fiancé," he managed, each word costing him. "She toasted me." Purple liquid. His breath hitched. "She smiled when I drank it." Every instinct screamed at Treasure to step back. This was the kind of trouble that got people disappeared. The kind she'd sworn to avoid after leaving the military and burying her past under a bartender's smile. But she saw the cyanotic blue creeping across his mouth, the way his chest heaved with desperate, irregular gasps, the cold sweat that spoke of organs shutting down. Whatever this man was, whatever crimes those tattoos represented, his body wasn't lying. He was dying. And 2 years ago, before the army court-martialed her father and erased her family name, she'd learned chemistry. Toxicology. How to identify poisons by scent alone. Her eyes found the shattered crystal glass 3 feet away. Purple liquid pooled on white marble, and the chemical signature hit her nostrils like a slap. Oleander derivative. Cardiac glycoside. Military grade. "Christ," she breathed. Then louder, sharper, "Chen. My purse from the back office." "Now." The sous chef's face appeared in the kitchen window, confusion turning to alarm. But Treasure was already moving, her composed bartender persona cracking like cheap ice. She dropped to her knees beside the stranger who smelled of expensive cologne and imminent cardiac arrest. Her hands worked with muscle memory she'd tried to bury, pulling open his collar, checking pupil dilation. "This is going to burn," she warned, producing a small vial of neon green liquid from the purse Chen thrust at her. Her emergency kit. The one she'd carried since identifying her father's killer by the chemical compounds in his blood. "Everything burns," Do Yoon managed, and she tipped the stabilizer past his lips. The effect wasn't instant like in movies. It crawled through him, airways expanding millimeter by millimeter. The deathly blue receding from his lips like a slow tide. His breathing found rhythm. His eyes found focus. And in that focus, Treasure saw something that made ice flood her veins. Recognition. Not of her face, but of what she'd just done. Professional recognition. Military recognition. "You knew the compound," he whispered. Not a question. An accusation. Or maybe respect. Before she could answer, movement caught her peripheral vision. Treasure's head turned slowly, following his gaze to the woman standing 15 feet away. The woman in red had been there the whole time. Watching. Waiting. She wore a floor-length crimson silk cheongsam that whispered old money and older blood. Her face could have been carved from marble, beautiful, cold, utterly devoid of emotion. Her hands were folded calmly at her waist in the posture of someone who'd already won and was simply waiting for confirmation of death. Do Yoon followed Treasure's stare, then looked back with new comprehension. "You see her," he said quietly. "You see what she is." "I see a woman who's not surprised you're dying," Treasure replied, her voice low. "I see someone who hasn't called for help." The woman in red's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. When she spoke, her voice carried across the empty gold room lounge like a funeral bell. Unexpected. The bartender knows chemistry. Her accent was refined soul, her tone absolutely glacial. How inconvenient. She raised one elegant hand. The service entrance behind the bar exploded open. 2 men in black tactical gear poured through, their movements precise and practiced. But it wasn't their weapons that stopped Treasure's heart. It was the face of the man leading them. Park Jin-soo, the chemist. The one who'd supplied the poison that killed her father in a military black site 3 years ago. The man Treasure had been hunting through every underground contact, every whispered name, every dead-end lead. The man who, according to every official record, didn't exist. Time crystallized into a single terrible moment of understanding. Jin-soo's eyes met hers across the bar, and she watched his expression shift from surprise to cold recognition. "You," he said, gun already drawn. "Marcus David's daughter." His smile was a knife. "This complicates things considerably." Do Yoon's hand found her wrist, still weak but urgent. "You know him." "He killed my father," Treasure said quietly. "Then we both have debts to pay," Do Yoon replied, and despite the poison still ravaging his system, there was steel in his voice. The steel of a man who'd built an empire on violence and wouldn't die until his debts were settled. Treasure's hand found the bottle of baijiu on the shelf behind her. Still full. 106 proof. Flammable. She didn't think. Thinking got people killed. She moved. The bottle left her hand in a perfect arc, liquor spraying like gasoline. Her other hand struck the ornamental candle on the bar. Fire caught air. Jin-soo jerked back as flames erupted between them, his shot going wide into the crystal chandelier. Do Yoon lunged from the floor with shocking strength for a man who'd been dying 60 seconds ago, tackling the nearest guard. Treasure vaulted the bar, grabbed the fire extinguisher from its mount, a mount she'd memorized on her first day because paranoia kept bartenders alive in this part of the city, and swung it like a bat into the second guard's temple. "Go," she screamed at Do Yoon, and they crashed through the kitchen's swinging doors. The alley hit them like a fist. Cold Seoul night air and the smell of garbage from the dumpsters. Behind them, Jin-soo's voice echoed commands. Boots pounded tile. Sirens wailed in the distance. Treasure's eyes found the delivery van she'd watched the liquor distributor park carelessly 20 minutes ago. Keys dangling from the ignition, because this was the kind of neighborhood where the Iron Dragon Syndicate's protection meant nobody stole delivery vans. "Can you drive?" Do Yoon asked, leaning heavily against the van's side, his bare chest slick with sweat despite the cold. "Can you navigate?" she shot back, door already open. He pushed himself into the passenger seat with visible effort, pulling out a phone with hands that still trembled. "Head east. I'll direct you." The engine roared to life. In the mirror, Treasure caught Jin-soo and his men bursting through the back door, weapons raised. She floored it. Bullets sparked off metal. The van fishtailed around the corner onto Gangnam Boulevard, tires screaming. Treasure's knuckles were white on the wheel, her heart hammering a rhythm she remembered from military convoys through hostile territory. Survive. 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 "Who are you running from?" she demanded, taking a sharp turn that made Do Yoon grab the door handle. His head rolled against the seat, face still ashen despite the stabilizer coursing through his system. "The woman I was supposed to marry. Half my syndicate. Take your pick." He managed something that might have been a smile. "I'm Do Yoon. Some people call me the Iron Dragon. And I need your help to stay alive long enough to figure out which of my own people just tried to murder me." Treasure's stomach dropped through the floor of the stolen van. She'd just saved and was now fleeing with the heir to the Iron Dragon Syndicate. A man whose name appeared in whispered warnings even among Seoul's criminal underworld. A man her father had investigated before he died. "Take the bridge exit," Do Yoon instructed, tapping something on his phone with elegant, steady fingers that suggested he was recovering fast. "My secondary compound. Off the grid. The only place I can think clearly right now." The gravity of her situation settled over Treasure like a burial shroud. Her entire carefully constructed life, the bartender cover, the studio apartment she shared with her grandmother, the quiet hunt for her father's killers, the hope of eventually maybe finding justice without becoming a monster herself. All of it had just shattered in 90 seconds of chemistry and impossible choices. She'd saved a man she didn't know, run from the man she'd been hunting for 3 years, and stolen a van full of imported whiskey. The absurdity would have been funny if bullets weren't still ringing in her ears. You could have let me die, Do Yoon said quietly, watching her with an intensity that felt like being dissected. Most people would have called emergency services and walked away. Especially after seeing those men. Especially after recognizing one of them. Treasure kept her eyes on the rain-slicked road, on the bridge stretching ahead into the dark Seoul skyline. I'm studying toxicology, she said, as if that explained everything. As if it explained why a former military chemist hunting her father's killer had just thrown away 2 years of careful invisibility to save a man who might be more dangerous than the one chasing them. The city lights reflected off the wet asphalt like stars that had fallen and shattered. Ahead, through the rain and fog, lay Do Yoon's world. A world she'd just been dragged into without warning, without choice, without any way back to the life she'd been trying to build from the ashes of the one Jin-soo destroyed. She thought of her grandmother, probably awake now, wondering why she hadn't come home from her shift. She thought of her apartment, her research notes, her carefully maintained anonymity. All of it felt very far away. Safe house is 4 kilometers, Do Yoon said, his voice stronger now. Gate code is 2847. My men will recognize this van. I own the distribution company. I have cameras on every approach. Of course you do, Treasure muttered. You saved my life tonight, he continued. That means something in my world. It means you're under my protection now. Whether you want it or not. What if I don't want it? Then you're welcome to walk back to that bar and explain to Park Jin-soo why you helped me escape. His tone was almost gentle. But we both know that's not really an option anymore. Not now that he knows Marcus David's daughter is alive and has the chemistry knowledge to identify his signature poisons. He was right. God help her, he was right. The gates appeared through the fog. Massive iron things that whispered money and power and secrets bought with blood. They opened silently as the van approached, and Treasure drove through into another world entirely. A world she couldn't leave. A world that might kill her. A world that somehow felt less like a trap than the one she'd just escaped. A world where the man who'd poisoned the Iron Dragon was the same man who'd murdered her father. And the dying king she'd just saved might be her only chance at the justice she'd been hunting for 3 years. Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The gates closed behind them with a finality that sounded like a tomb ceiling. Treasure killed the engine, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. Through the windshield, Do Yoon's secondary compound stretched before them, a sprawling estate of dark glass and steel that looked more like a fortress than a home. Do Yoon was already checking his phone, his fingers moving across the screen with increasing urgency. The color drained from his face. What? Treasure demanded. Security feed. He turned the screen toward her. Multiple camera angles showed figures in tactical gear surrounding the perimeter. They're already here. Minna knew about this location. How many safe houses do you have? Had 3. She knows them all. His jaw tightened. She's been planning this for months. Maybe longer. Treasure's mind raced through options, each one worse than the last. Behind them, headlights cut through the fog. Jin-soo's team, minutes away at most. I know a place, she heard herself say. Small. Off-grid. Nobody knows about it. Do Yoon studied her face. Your place. My grandmother's apartment. Hongdae District. 4th floor walk-up in a building with 60 other units. No security cameras, all cash rent. The kind of place your people would never look. That's why it might work. He grimaced, pressing a hand to his chest. But I need proper treatment soon. That stabilizer bought me time, not a cure. I know. Treasure restarted the engine. I have supplies. Not military grade, but enough. They abandoned the van 3 blocks from her building, Do Yoon leaning heavily on her shoulder as they navigated the pre-dawn streets of Hongdae. His bare torso drew stares from the few people heading to early shifts, but in this neighborhood of art students and club kids, a shirtless tattooed man wasn't the strangest thing stumbling home at 5 a.m. Treasure wrapped her bartender jacket around his shoulders, covering some of the ink. Try to look drunk, not dying. Not much acting required, he muttered, but he leaned into her more convincingly, letting his head loll against hers. They climbed 4 flights of narrow stairs, each step seeming to cost him more effort. By the time Treasure keyed open the apartment door, Do Yoon's breathing had gone shallow again, his skin clammy with cold sweat. Her grandmother's apartment was exactly as she'd left it, cramped, cluttered with decades of accumulated life, the smell of incense and kimchi lingering in the air. The space couldn't have been more different from the Gold Room Lounge or Do Yoon's fortress compound. This was survival, not empire. Bathroom, Treasure ordered, flipping on lights. Now. Do Yoon collapsed onto the closed toilet seat while she pulled supplies from hidden compartments. A military surplus medical kit lived behind the false panel under the sink. Another was taped inside the bathroom's ceiling tiles. Her father had taught her that safety came in layers, redundancy, preparation for the worst. She snapped on latex gloves, her movements efficient and practiced. This is going to hurt worse than the stabilizer. The poison is a cardiac glycoside, it binds to your cells. I need to flush your system with activated charcoal and run in 4 chelation agent. You keep a chelation agent in your bathroom? Do Yoon's voice was strained but curious. I keep a lot of things most bartenders don't. Treasure assembled the 4-line with swift precision. Roll up your sleeve. Actually, you're not wearing sleeves. Left arm. She found the vein on the first try, sliding the needle home with the muscle memory of someone who'd done this in far worse conditions. The clear fluid began dripping into his bloodstream. Now the hard part. She held up a large syringe filled with black liquid. Activated charcoal slurry. You need to drink this. All of it. Deunide the viscous substance with something approaching fear. That looks like death. The alternative is actual death. Your choice. He took the syringe and downed it in 3 agonizing swallows, his face contorting with disgust. Christ. Tastes like drinking concrete. Try not to vomit. If you do, I have to start over. For the next 20 minutes, Treasure monitored his vitals while the chelation agent worked to bind the remaining toxins in his blood. She'd done field medicine in worse conditions, a tent in Kandahar, a basement in Kabul, but never in her grandmother's bathroom while Seoul woke up outside the window. Do Yoon's eyes stayed on her face the entire time, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Where did you learn this? This isn't bartender training. Military. My father was a toxicologist for Army intelligence. He taught me chemistry, compounds, how to identify poisons by smell and symptom presentation. I was supposed to follow in his footsteps until she stopped herself. Until Jin-soo killed him. It wasn't a question. Treasure's hands stilled on the 4-line. Your father was Colonel Marcus David, Do Yoon continued quietly. I remember the case. He died investigating a chemical weapons smuggling operation 3 years ago. Official cause of death was heart attack, but rumors said poison. A signature compound that left no trace. Purple shadow. Treasure's voice came out hollow. The same thing Minna used on you tonight. That's how I knew what it was. That's how I had the antidote. I've been hunting the chemist who made it for 3 years, and tonight he walked into my bar. Not coincidence. No, not coincidence. She met his eyes. Jin-soo was there for you. Minna hired him. Which means your fiancé's network overlaps with the people who killed my father. Then we both have debts to collect. Do Yoon's hand caught her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong for a man being actively detoxified. Help me stay alive long enough to take back my syndicate, and I'll give you Jin-soo. Every resource I have, every contact, every piece of information. He's yours. Treasure should have said no. Should have pushed him out, called emergency services, disappeared back into her safe, anonymous life. But safe and anonymous hadn't brought her any closer to justice in 3 years. And this dying man with his dragon tattoos and his empire in ruins was offering her something she'd never had before. A chance. Deal, she said. By dawn, Do Yoon's vitals had stabilized enough for her to remove the 4. The charcoal would continue working through his system for another 12 hours, but the immediate danger had passed. He'd live. Treasure cleaned up the medical waste while he sat on her grandmother's couch, looking absurdly out of place among the lace doilies and framed family photos. She'd given him one of her oversized hoodies to cover the tattoos, black fabric stretched tight across his shoulders. Turn on the news, he said suddenly. Any station. She grabbed the remote, flipping to the morning broadcast. The anchor's face was grave as footage played behind her. Breaking news in the death of Do Yoon, heir to the Iron Dragon Syndicate. Sources confirm the 34-year-old businessman collapsed at an exclusive lounge last night and was pronounced dead at the scene. His fiancée, Min-ah Park, released this statement. The screen cut to Min-ah standing outside the gold room, dressed now in elegant black mourning clothes. Her face was a perfect mask of grief, tears streaming down her cheeks as cameras flashed. Do Yoon was the love of my life, she said, her voice breaking in exactly the right places. We were supposed to be married next month. I can't believe he's gone. The doctors say it was a heart condition, something genetic he'd been fighting for years, but never told me about because he didn't want me to worry. Heart condition, Treasure repeated flatly. Clever. She's good. Do Yoon's voice held a cold appreciation. Look at her hands. Treasure looked closer. Min-ah's fingers twisted a handkerchief, the gesture of a woman barely holding herself together. But there on her right hand, a flash of something. A ring. Not an engagement ring. Is that red jade set in platinum? The signet ring of the Iron Dragon Syndicate's first chair. Do Yoon's jaw clenched. She's already wearing my seat. She declared herself my heir before my body was cold. The broadcast continued. Interviews with business associates praising Do Yoon's vision. Shots of the syndicate's legitimate holdings, restaurants, real estate, import companies. Everything was clean and professional and completely scrubbed of the truth about what the Iron Dragon Syndicate actually controlled. Then the anchor's tone shifted. In related news, 3 high-ranking members of Do Yoon's organization died in what police are calling unrelated accidents over the last 12 hours. Park Min-soo was found dead from an apparent gas leak. Song Joon-ho died in a car accident on the Han River Bridge. And Lee Dae-young suffered a fatal fall from his apartment balcony. 3 of my most loyal people, Do Yoon said softly. The ones who would have questioned her inheritance. The ones who knew I didn't have a heart condition. She's cleaning house. She's securing power. By the end of the week, everyone who might challenge her will be dead or converted. And the world will believe I died of natural causes, tragic and young but peaceful. His hands curled into fists. I can't let that stand. I can't let her take everything I built and use it for whatever her real purpose is. Then we need to know what her real purpose is. Treasure's mind was already working through possibilities. Why would a rival syndicate plant an agent as your fiancé? What's the endgame? Control of the ports. The Iron Dragon Syndicate manages 60% of Seoul's shipping traffic, both legal and otherwise. If she controls that, she controls the entire flow of goods in and out of Korea. And Jinsu's chemical operation. Treasure pulled out her phone, scrolling through encrypted files she'd accumulated over 3 years of investigation. My father's last report mentioned a shipment. Military-grade compounds being moved through civilian channels. He was killed before he could identify the destination port. You think Jinsu is using my ports to smuggle chemical weapons? I think Min-ah married you to get access to infrastructure for a smuggling operation. Jinsu is the supplier. She's the distributor. And you were the key to the entire network until you became a liability instead of an asset. Do Yoon stood, pacing her small living room like a caged animal. I need to know where Jinsu operates. Where he manufactures the compounds. I have a lead. Treasure pulled up a file marked with her father's service number. 3 years ago, my father tracked chemical signatures to an industrial district in Incheon. Abandoned pharmaceutical plant, purchased through shell corporations. He was going to raid it the day he died. You want to go there? I want to finish what he started. It's been 3 years. The operation could be anywhere now. Or it could still be there, hidden under so many corporate layers nobody's found it yet. Treasure met his eyes. You said you'd give me every resource. I need transportation, surveillance equipment, and backup if things go bad. I can get you all of that. But I need time to contact people I trust, verify who's still loyal versus who's already flipped to Min-ah. He checked his phone again. And I need to recover enough strength to be useful in a fight. The next 72 hours fell into an uneasy routine. Do Yoon slept on Treasure's couch, his body fighting off the remaining traces of purple shadow, while she researched Jinsu's network. At night, they planned. During the day, They watched the news coverage of Do Yoon's death and Minna's consolidation of power. "You're too recognizable," Treasure said on the third morning, watching him struggle with her grandmother's coffee maker. "Your tattoos, your face, everything. If you walk outside, someone will see you." "I've never needed to hide before." The point of the tattoos was to be seen, to be feared. "Well, now you need to disappear." She pulled a box from the closet: hair dye, colored contacts, cheap civilian clothes. "If we're going to investigate that lab, you need to look like someone who works there, not someone who owns it." Do you eyed the box with suspicion. "You want me to dye my hair?" "Brown. Average. Forgettable. And cover the neck tattoos with makeup or a high collar?" "The full sleeve we can't hide, but long sleeves will work for now." "This is humiliating. This is survival. Welcome to my world." 2 hours later, a different man sat in her bathroom. Brown hair instead of black, cheap glasses, a nondescript jacket that hid most of his identity. He looked like 1,000 other office workers in Seoul. "I hate this," Do Yoon muttered. "But you're alive." Treasure studied him critically. "That's what matters. Now, my turn to learn something." She pulled a lockbox from under her bed, opening it to reveal a single handgun, her father's service weapon, the only thing she'd kept after his death. "You know how to shoot?" Do Yoon asked. "I know the theory. Never actually fired one. Theory gets you killed." He took the weapon, checking it with practiced efficiency. "If we're going into Jinsu's territory, you need to know how to use this properly. Not just point and pray." They couldn't practice shooting in a residential building, but he could teach her the fundamentals. Stance, grip, sight alignment, trigger discipline. For an hour, they worked through dry-fire drills in her cramped living room. "You're flinching before the shot," he observed. "Anticipating recoil that isn't coming yet. The gun fires when it fires. Your job is to be steady when it does." Easy for you to say. You probably learned this when you were 12. 10, actually. "My father believed in practical education." His voice went distant. "He also believed in family loyalty. Guess we were both wrong about some things." Treasure lowered the weapon. "Minna wasn't always your enemy." "No. I thought I loved her. Or maybe I just loved the idea of her, someone who understood this world, who could stand beside me without flinching at what the Iron Dragon does to survive." He took the gun back, checked the safety. "She played the role perfectly for 2 years. I never saw it coming. Nobody sees betrayal coming. That's what makes it betrayal." Spoken like someone who knows. "My father trusted the army. Trusted the system. They buried his investigation and called his death natural causes because acknowledging the truth would mean admitting military chemicals were being sold on the black market." Treasure's voice hardened. "I learned young that institutions protect themselves, not people. So we protect ourselves. Until we're strong enough to burn the institutions down." Do Yoon smiled, and for the first time it wasn't the smile of a dying man or a beaten king. It was the smile of someone who'd just found an ally in a war he'd thought he was fighting alone. By the fourth night, Do Yoon had made contact with 3 members of his organization who'd gone underground after the purge. They confirmed Minna's systematic elimination of his loyalists, but also provided intelligence on her movements. She was planning a memorial gala for the end of the week, a public display of grief that would cement her position as the sympathetic heir to a tragic empire. "She's overconfident," Do Yoon said, studying security layouts on Treasure's laptop. "Moving too fast. That's good for us." "Or she's on a timeline," Treasure countered. "The chemical shipment. If Jinsu is moving product through your ports, there's a schedule. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon. Then we hit the lab tomorrow. Get evidence, find Jinsu, and figure out what Minna's actual endgame is." Treasure pulled up satellite images of the Incheon industrial complex. The pharmaceutical plant sat in a cluster of abandoned factories, accessible by a single access road that would make surveillance easy but escape difficult. "We go in before dawn," she planned. 2-person reconnaissance. Get in, document whatever we find, get out. No heroics, no confrontations. You've done this before. My father took me on observation runs when I was younger. Taught me how to gather intelligence without being seen. Said the best weapon was information, not firepower. He was half right. Do Yoon checked the gun again. Information tells you where to aim, but you still need to pull the trigger. They left at 4 a.m., taking a borrowed car from one of Do Yoon's underground contacts. The drive to Incheon took 40 minutes through empty highways, the city still sleeping. The pharmaceutical plant loomed against the pre-dawn sky, a hulking concrete structure that had been cutting-edge 20 years ago and forgotten 10 years later. Weeds pushed through cracked pavement. Windows were shattered or boarded. Everything screamed abandonment, except for the fresh tire tracks leading to the loading dock. "Someone's been here recently," Treasure whispered, crouching beside the treads. "Heavy vehicle. Within the last 12 hours. Delivery or pickup?" Do Yoon had his weapon drawn, scanning the perimeter. "Either way, we're not alone." They approached from the east, using shadow and cover the way Treasure's father had taught her. The loading dock door was sealed with a modern electronic lock, far too sophisticated for an abandoned building. "I can bypass this," Do Yoon said, pulling a device from his pocket. "But it'll trigger an internal alarm if they have secondary systems." "Do it. We need to know what's inside." The lock disengaged with a soft click. They slipped through, finding themselves in a cavernous warehouse space. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, illuminating rows of industrial equipment that should have been sold for scrap years ago. Instead, it was running. Chemical synthesizers hummed with power. Distillation columns gleamed with fresh maintenance. And everywhere, were barrels marked with hazard symbols that made Treasure's blood run cold. "This isn't just purple shadow," she breathed, moving closer to examine labels. "This is enough chemical weapons precursor to supply a small war. Or poison a city's water supply," Do Yoon added grimly. Treasure pulled out her phone, documenting everything. Serial numbers, chemical formulas, shipping manifests tucked into plastic sleeves. Evidence that Jinsu's operation wasn't just a smuggling ring, it was a manufacturing center for mass casualty weapons. Then she saw it. A filing cabinet in the corner, one drawer slightly ajar. Inside, personnel files, supply chain documentation, and stapled to the front of one folder, a photograph of her father, with a red stamp across his face. Eliminated. Her hands shook as she pulled the file. It was all there. Her father's investigation timeline. The evidence he'd gathered. The names of everyone involved in the smuggling operation, from suppliers to distributors to the final buyers. And at the top of the distribution chain, highlighted in yellow, Park Min-ah, Iron Dragon Syndicate. "She was running this before she ever met you," Treasure said, showing Do Yoon the documents. "You weren't the target. You were the tool. She needed your ports, your infrastructure, your legal cover for the illegal operation. And when I started asking questions about unusual shipments, you became a liability. Easier to marry you, poison you, and take everything than risk you discovering the truth." A sound from the far side of the warehouse froze them both. Footsteps. Multiple people, moving with tactical precision. "We need to leave," Do Yoon whispered urgently. "Now." But they were already surrounded. Lights blazed to life, blinding after the darkness. When Treasure's eyes adjusted, she counted 6 armed men forming a perimeter around them. And walking through their center, his smile sharp as broken glass, was Park Jin-soo. "Treasure David," he said pleasantly. "I wondered when you'd finally find this place. Your father certainly tried hard enough before I stopped him." His eyes shifted to Do Yoon. "And the dead king walks. How inconvenient. I was told you'd be very dead by now." "Your partner's poison wasn't quite strong enough," Do Yoon replied, his voice steady despite the guns pointed at them. "Amateur mistake." "No, the poison was perfect." But apparently Min-ah underestimated the bartender's chemistry knowledge. Jinsu's gaze returned to Treasure. "Your father's daughter indeed. He was quite brilliant, you know. Came so close to shutting down our entire operation. Such a waste. You killed him." Treasure's voice came out flat, emotionless. The tone of someone pushed beyond rage into something colder. "I eliminated a threat to my business. Nothing personal." Although watching him realize the poison was already in his system, seeing that moment of understanding before the cardiac arrest hit, Jin-soo smiled. That was almost poetic. The gun was in her hand before conscious thought. The training Do Yoon had drilled into her taking over. Stance, grip, sight alignment, trigger discipline. Treasure, don't, Do Yoon started. She fired. The shot went wide, exactly as a first-timer shot would. But it was enough distraction. Do Yoon moved like liquid violence, putting 2 rounds into the nearest guard before dropping into cover behind a synthesizer. Chaos erupted. Gunfire strobed in the warehouse. Treasure dove behind a chemical barrel, her heart hammering. This wasn't reconnaissance anymore. This was survival. East exit, Do Yoon shouted, laying down covering fire. 30 meters, straight shot. Treasure ran, keeping low, her father's files clutched against her chest. Bullets sparked off metal around her. Behind her, Do Yoon's weapon cracked with methodical precision. For all his time playing office worker in her apartment, he hadn't forgotten how to be the Iron Dragon. They burst through the east door into gray dawnlight. The borrowed car was 100 yards away across open pavement. Go! Do Yoon shoved her forward. I'll cover. The shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, weapon skittering across concrete. Treasure turned back, every instinct screaming at her to run. But that cold, emotionless part, the part that had spent 3 years hunting her father's killer, made a different calculation. She couldn't carry Do Yoon and return fire. Couldn't fight 6 trained men alone. Couldn't save them both. But she could make Jin-soo pay. The warehouse door stood open behind them. Inside, hundreds of barrels of chemical weapons precursors. Volatile. Unstable. Flammable. Treasure pulled the road flare from her pocket, part of the car's emergency kit, grabbed on instinct when they'd left. She pulled the cap, struck the igniter. Then she threw it through the open door into the chemical warehouse. Run, she screamed, grabbing Do Yoon's good arm and hauling him to his feet. They made it 20 yards before the world turned to fire. The explosion lit up the Incheon sky like a second sunrise, a ball of chemical flame that vaporized 3 years of Jin-soo's operation in an instant. The shockwave knocked them both flat, heat washing over their backs. When Treasure looked back, the warehouse was gone. Just burning wreckage and the screams of anyone who'd been inside. Did you just? Do Yoon coughed, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Eliminated a threat to my mission, Treasure finished, echoing Jin-soo's words. Nothing personal. They made it to the car. Made it back to Seoul as emergency vehicles screamed past them toward the fire. Made it to her apartment before Do Yoon's adrenaline wore off and the pain of the bullet wound brought him to his knees. Treasure had him on the bathroom floor again, digging out the bullet with tools that were definitely not designed for field surgery. But she was steady. Cold. Clinical. Jin-soo. Do Yoon asked through gritted teeth. I don't know. Maybe dead. Maybe escaped. She dropped the bullet into her grandmother's teacup with a clink. But his operation is finished. 3 years of infrastructure gone. The chemicals, the equipment, the documentation, all of it burned. Except what you took. Treasure held up her father's files, now splattered with Do Yoon's blood but intact. Except what I took. Every name, every transaction, every piece of evidence my father gathered before he died. Including Min-ah's involvement from the beginning. Then we have what we need to destroy her. We have what we need, Treasure agreed, stitching the bullet wound with the same emotionless precision she'd used to fire the gun. Now we just need to survive long enough to use it. Outside the window, Seoul woke to news of a massive industrial fire in Incheon. Authorities were investigating. No casualties confirmed yet. Just smoke and flames and the ashes of secrets buried in chemical fire. Inside the apartment, a dead king learned how to be ordinary. And a bartender learned that some debts could only be paid in blood and fire. They both learned that survival wasn't about strength or power or empire. It was about having someone you could trust when the whole world was burning. Do Yoon's shoulder healed slowly over the next week, the wound a constant reminder that they were running out of time. Every day, Min-ah consolidated more power. Every day more of his former allies either bent the knee or disappeared. The memorial gala was 3 days away, and after that, challenging her claim would become nearly impossible. We need to move before the gala, Treasure said, studying the files spread across her living room floor. Once she's publicly confirmed as your heir, the syndicate's entire legal and financial infrastructure transfers to her control. Agreed. But we're still missing something. Do Yoon tapped one of her father's documents. These chemical shipments. The amounts are massive, far more than what we saw at the warehouse. Where's the rest? Treasure's eyes tracked the numbers. Tons of compounds, shipped over 3 years through Do Yoon's ports. Even accounting for Jinsu's operation, there should be warehouses full of chemical weapons somewhere. She's not stockpiling, Treasure said slowly. She's preparing for deployment. A single massive event that requires this much precursor material. What kind of event needs tons of chemical weapons? The answer hit Treasure like ice water. She grabbed her laptop, pulling up Seoul's municipal infrastructure maps. The water system. She's going to poison the city's water supply. Do Yoon leaned over her shoulder, following her logic. Seoul's water comes from the Han River, filtered through 3 main treatment plants. If you introduce compounds at the right point in the purification process, you could poison millions of people before anyone realized what was happening. Create mass panic, mass casualties, complete system collapse. Treasure's fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing chemical formulas with water treatment protocols. And in the chaos, whoever controls the cure controls the city. Minna doesn't want my empire. She wants to be the only person who can save Seoul from a catastrophic attack she's creating. Then sell the cure at whatever price she wants. Name her terms to the government, to international organizations, to anyone desperate enough to pay. Treasure pulled up shipping manifests. Look. Final delivery scheduled for tomorrow night. Han River Treatment Plant Number 2. The one that supplies downtown Seoul and the financial district. We intercept the shipment. Destroy the chemicals before they reach the water supply. And then we take her down at the gala with evidence she can't deny. They spent the next 12 hours planning. Do Yoon contacted his remaining loyalists, a network of 5 people scattered throughout the syndicate who'd managed to avoid Minna's purge by pretending to accept her leadership. Treasure prepared chemical neutralization protocols in case they couldn't prevent the shipment from reaching the treatment plant. The intercept point was a loading dock on the Han River, a supposedly abandoned pier that Do Yoon's intelligence suggested Minna was using for off-books transfers. They arrived at midnight, Do Yoon's shoulder still stiff but functional, both of them armed and ready. The shipment arrived right on schedule. An unmarked truck backed up to the pier, and men in hazmat suits began unloading barrels. The same chemical symbols Treasure had seen in Incheon. Enough concentrated poison to contaminate the entire treatment plant. For guards, 2 drivers, probably more in the truck, Do Yoon whispered from their hiding spot behind a shipping container. We need to disable the vehicle and contain the chemicals without causing another explosion. Leave the truck to me. You handle the guards. Treasure, I can hotwire it in 30 seconds and drive it into the river. The chemicals are sealed in waterproof barrels. They'll sink, we'll recover them later, and Minna's plan dies tonight. It was insane. It was also their best option. On my signal, Do Yoon said and moved like a shadow toward the guards. Treasure waited, heart pounding, until she heard the first gunshot. Then she ran. The truck driver saw her coming, reached for his weapon. She put him down with 2 shots, the training Do Yoon had drilled into her taking over, stance and grip and trigger discipline, all muscle memory now. The second driver dove for cover. She was in the cab, fingers working the ignition wires, when someone grabbed her from behind. Where do you think? Treasure drove her elbow back into his solar plexus, felt him wheeze and loosen his grip. She twisted, brought her knee up hard, and he went down. 30 seconds, just like she'd promised. The engine roared to life. Behind her, Do Yoon's weapon cracked methodical precision. In front of her, the pier ended in dark water. Treasure put the truck in gear and floored it. 20 yards. 10. 5. She threw herself out the driver's door, hit the pier rolling, felt the impact jar through her bones. The truck sailed off the edge and plunged into the Han River with a massive splash. For a moment, nothing. Then Do Yoon was there, pulling her to her feet. Are you completely insane? You asked if I could drive. I'm a better getaway driver than a bartender. I noticed. They were turning to leave when headlights cut through the darkness. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. Not Minna's people. Rival gang, Do Yoon cursed. Someone tipped them about the shipment. They want the chemicals for themselves. Can we negotiate? Not with the Red Phoenix clan. They've wanted my territory for years. Finding me alive is a bonus opportunity they won't pass up. Then we run. They made it to their car as the first bullets sparked off metal. Treasure was behind the wheel before Do Yoon finished closing his door, the engine already screaming as she threw it into reverse. Left, Do Yoon shouted. Alley between the warehouses. Treasure yanked the wheel, the car fishtailing through the turn. Behind them, 3 motorcycles and 2 cars gave chase. This wasn't Jinsu's tactical precision, this was street gang chaos, bullets spraying wildly. They're not trying to capture you, Treasure observed, weaving through narrow streets. They're trying to kill us both. Dead kings can't reclaim thrones. Hold on. She barely registered his warning before he leaned out the window and returned fire. One motorcycle went down, the rider tumbling across pavement. The others accelerated, closing the gap. Night market ahead, Do Yoon said. Dense crowds, narrow lanes. They won't risk civilian casualties. Bad for business. You're asking me to drive through a crowded night market at high speed. I'm asking you to keep us alive. Details are negotiable. Treasure had maybe 2 seconds to decide. Then the night market exploded around them in a chaos of light and sound and terrified people diving for cover. She leaned on the horn, carved a path between food stalls and vendor carts. Her entire world narrowed to the gap ahead and the motorcycles in her mirrors. A fruit stand erupted in her wake. A clothing rack went flying. Behind her, the red Phoenix vehicles struggled to follow through the debris field she was creating. Right turn coming up, Do Yoon warned. Leads to the Riverside Expressway. That's a one-way street. I'm aware. We'll be going the wrong direction. Hence why they won't expect it. Turn. Now. Treasure turned. Headlights blazed toward them as late-night traffic swerved and scattered. Horns blared. Somewhere behind them, police sirens joined the symphony of chaos. Treasure kept her foot down, weaving between oncoming cars with inches to spare. Next exit, Do Yoon said with unnatural calm. Merge right, double back through the underpass. You've done this before. I've escaped from worse. Take the exit. She did. The car careened down the off-ramp, through the underpass, and suddenly they were alone on an empty industrial street. The motorcycles and cars were gone, lost somewhere in the maze of Seoul's nighttime traffic. Treasure's hands shook on the wheel as adrenaline drained away. Did we just lose them? Yes. Commit about 15 traffic violations? Also yes. Alert every cop in Seoul to our location? Definitely yes. Do Yoon was already checking his phone. We need to ditch this car and disappear for the next 24 hours. The gala is tomorrow night. Minna will know someone intercepted her shipment. She'll be on high alert. Good. Let her be nervous. Treasure pulled into an abandoned parking garage. We have the evidence from my father's files. We have the shipping manifests from the warehouse. And now we have confirmation she was planning to poison the water supply. All we need is to get it in front of the syndicate's board of directors at the gala. Easier said than done. The gala is invitation only, high security, metal detectors at every entrance. How do we get evidence inside? Treasure smiled, an expression that Do Yoon was learning meant she'd had a dangerous idea. We don't hide the evidence. We wear it. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. One of Do Yoon's remaining loyalists was a jewelry designer who owed him favors. She took Treasure's microdrive containing all the evidence, her father's files, the shipping manifests, the chemical formulas, everything, and embedded it in an elegant diamond hairpin. Expensive, the designer said, holding up the finished piece. But invisible. Security will scan it as jewelry, nothing more. The data is encrypted onto a chip smaller than a grain of rice. And the receiver? Do Yoon asked. Built into this cufflink. Just get within 3 feet of each board member and the data will automatically transfer to their phones. They won't even know they have it until you want them to. Perfect. Do Yoon turned to Treasure. Now you just need to look like someone who belongs at a syndicate gala. The dress was midnight blue, elegant enough to blend with old money, but striking enough to be memorable. Treasure stood in front of her grandmother's mirror, barely recognizing herself. The woman reflected back looked like she belonged in the Gold Room lounge, not a 4th-floor walk-up in Hongdae. You clean up well, Do Yoon said from the doorway. He'd abandoned his ordinary disguise for tonight, back in a tailored suit that reminded her he was more than just a wounded king on her couch. He was the Iron Dragon, and tonight he was reclaiming his throne. "You're sure this will work?" Treasure asked, pinning the evidence-laden hairpin in her dark hair. "Minna thinks I'm dead. Thinks her plan is secure. Thinks she's won." His reflection met hers in the mirror. "Arrogance is a weakness. We're going to exploit it. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise. Together." He offered his arm. "Ready to crash a memorial gala? Let's go bury the bride." The gala was held at the Grand Josian Hotel, the same venue where Minna and Do Yoon were supposed to have been married next month. The irony wasn't lost on Treasure as they approached the entrance, her arm linked through his. Security stopped them at the door. Treasure's breath caught, but Do Yoon smiled easily. Kim Junho and guest. Ms. Park sent a personal invitation. The guard checked his tablet, found the name, one of Do Yoon's loyalists who'd confirmed his attendance, but wouldn't actually show. "Go ahead." Elevator to the Crystal Ballroom, 5th floor. They were in. The ballroom was a showcase of wealth and power disguised as mourning. Black and white decor. Ice sculptures of dragons. Hundreds of souls elite pretending to grieve a man most of them had never actually liked. And at the center of it all, standing beside a portrait of Do Yoon, was Minna. She wore white tonight, the Korean color of mourning, a stunning gown that made her look like a grief-stricken bride. Her performance was flawless, accepting condolences with just the right amount of composure, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief, playing the role of tragic fiancée to perfection. "I want to strangle her," Treasure whispered. "Get in line," Do Yoon replied. "But first, we distribute the evidence. See the 7 people near the bar? That's the Syndicate's board of directors. Every decision about the Iron Dragon's future goes through them. Get close, let the cufflink do its work." Treasure moved through the crowd with practiced ease, the bartender in her knowing exactly how to navigate social spaces without drawing attention. She brushed past Director Park, lingered near Director Song, paused to accept champagne next to Director Lee. Each time, Do Yoon's cufflink pulsed once, data transferred, evidence delivered. By the time she'd reached all 7 board members, Minna was moving to the small stage at the front of the ballroom. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Minna began, her voice perfectly modulated between strength and sorrow. Do Yoon would have been honored to see so many people celebrating his life and legacy. "I doubt that," Do Yoon murmured beside Treasure. "I would have found this whole thing insufferable." His death was sudden, tragic, a reminder of how fragile life can be. But his vision, his empire, will continue. "I've spent the last week ensuring that everything he built remains strong, protected, ready for the future." Meaning she's killed or bought everyone who might challenge her, Treasure translated. "So please, join me in a toast to Do Yoon. To his memory, his strength, and to the Iron Dragon Syndicate that will honor him by thriving long into the future." Servers moved through the crowd with champagne flutes. Treasure accepted one, watched Minna raise her glass with theatrical grace. "That's the same crystal pattern," Do Yoon said suddenly. "The same glasses from the gold room. The same glasses she poisoned me with. She's doing it again." Treasure's mind raced. She's going to poison the board members. Tonight, at the memorial gala. Blame their deaths on grief, stress, the tragedy of Do Yoon's passing. Eliminate anyone who might question her leadership in one stroke. "Can you tell which glasses are poisoned?" Treasure's bartender training took over. She studied the trays, the way servers held them, the slight color variation in the liquid that most people would miss, but she'd been trained to see. "Third tray from the left. The champagne has that same purple undertone. Faint, almost invisible, but there." Then we switched them. It was insane. It was also their only option. Do Yoon created a distraction, bumping into a server near the kitchen entrance, apologizing profusely while Treasure's hands worked fast. Swap the poison tray for clean glasses from the bar. Replace Minna's glass with one from the contaminated tray. 30 seconds of sleight of hand learned from years of bartending, and the trap was reversed. They melted back into the crowd as Minna raised her glass higher. "To Do Yoon," she said. "May he rest in peace." "To Do Yoon," the crowd echoed. Minna drank deeply, her performance of grief requiring a dramatic gesture. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her eyes widened. Her hand went to her throat. The crystal glass shattered on marble floor. Chaos erupted. People surged forward. Someone screamed for a doctor. And in the confusion, Do Yoon stepped onto the stage. The crowd fell silent. Color drained from faces. A woman near the front fainted. Surprised? Do Yoon asked, his voice carrying across the ballroom with absolute authority. I'm told that death doesn't suit me. Minna stared at him with something beyond shock. Beyond fear. Pure calculation, even as the poison worked through her system. Impossible, she managed. You're dead. I watched you die. You watched me collapse. But you left before confirming the kill. Sloppy. He pulled out his phone, connected it to the ballroom's presentation system. You also left evidence. Lots of evidence. The board of directors should check their phones. You'll find comprehensive documentation of Ms. Park's 3-year operation smuggling chemical weapons through Iron Dragon ports, including her plan to poison Seoul's water supply and sell the cure for profit. 7 phones chimed simultaneously. 7 board members looked at screens showing shipping manifests, chemical formulas, transaction records, everything Treasure's father had died gathering, everything they'd recovered from Jinsu's warehouse. You were never my fiancé, Do Yoon continued. You were a corporate spy for the Red Phoenix clan, planted to infiltrate and destroy the Iron Dragon from within. Tonight you attempted to poison me and the entire board of directors to complete your takeover. But you made one mistake. What mistake? Minna asked, her voice weakening as the purple shadow toxin spread. You underestimated the bartender. Treasure stepped onto the stage beside him, the diamond hairpin catching light. The woman you dismissed as an obstacle was the daughter of the man who first exposed your operation. The woman you thought was just a convenient witness was a military toxicologist who knew exactly what poison you'd used. The woman you ignored while focusing on Do Yoon was the one who saved his life and documented your crimes. Minna's legs buckled. Do Yoon caught her, lowered her to the stage floor with surprising gentleness. There's an antidote, he said quietly, pulling out a vial of neon green liquid. The same one Treasure used to save me. I could give it to you now. Save your life, let you stand trial, spend decades in prison for espionage and attempted mass murder. Minna's eyes begged silently. Or, Do Yoon continued, I could let the poison work. Let you die the way you intended me to die. Alone, afraid, knowing you failed. Do Yoon, Treasure said softly. Not a command. Just his name. A reminder of who he'd chosen to be in her 4th-floor apartment, learning to be ordinary instead of monstrous. He looked at her, then back at Minna. Then he administered the antidote. She stands trial, he said to the board members who'd surrounded the stage. Public exposure. Every crime documented. Let the world see what she tried to do to this city. Director Park nodded slowly. And your claim to the Iron Dragon? Is legitimate. Always was. Will be again. Do Yoon stood, Treasure beside him. But with changes. No more operating in shadows. No more illegal shipments we pretend not to see. The Iron Dragon Syndicate will be exactly what we claim, a legitimate business empire. Or I walk away and let you all fight over the ashes. And her? Director Song asked, nodding at Treasure. She's my partner. Equal standing, equal authority. The Iron Dragon will have 2 heads now. One who knows this world, and one who knows how to move in the legal one. Anyone who has a problem with that can resign tonight. No one moved. Good, Do Yoon said. Get Ms. Park to a hospital. Under police guard. I'll be providing evidence to prosecutors first thing tomorrow morning. And someone get this memorial portrait down, I'm not dead, and the decor is morbid. The next hour was a blur of statements to police, board members pledging renewed loyalty, and Minna being carried out on a stretcher to face justice instead of death. Through it all, Treasure stood beside Do Yoon, her hand in his, the partnership they'd forged in blood and fire now formalized in front of Seoul's criminal and business elite. Finally, near midnight, they escaped to the hotel's rooftop garden. The city sprawled beneath them, millions of lights representing millions of lives they'd saved without anyone knowing how close Seoul had come to catastrophe. So, Treasure said, Queen of the Underground. That's quite a promotion from Bartender. You earned it. Saved my life twice, destroyed Jinsu's operation, gathered the evidence that exposed Minna's entire network. I'd say you're qualified. What about Jinsu? The explosion at the warehouse, body recovered this morning. Killed in the blast. Do Yoon's voice was neutral, but Treasure heard the understanding beneath. Your father's killer is dead. That debt is paid. 3 years of hunting concluded in chemical fire. Treasure should have felt triumph, closure, something. Instead, she just felt tired. What happens now, she asked. Now? We rebuild. The Iron Dragon Syndicate transitions to legitimate operations. We use our resources to actually help this city instead of bleeding it. We hunt down the remaining members of the chemical weapons network before someone else tries what Minna attempted. He stopped. I'm getting ahead of myself. What do you want to happen now? Treasure thought about her 4th-floor walk-up. Her grandmother's lace doilies and framed photos. The simple life she'd built after her father's death, quiet and safe and utterly ordinary. She thought about the last 2 weeks. The adrenaline and the danger and the feeling of fighting for something that mattered. Having a partner who trusted her completely. Using her knowledge to save lives instead of just mixing drinks. Being extraordinary instead of hiding from it. I want to see this through, she said. All of it. The syndicate transition, hunting the network, making sure my father's investigation actually means something. She met his eyes. I want to stand beside you and build something better than what came before. Even though it's dangerous? Especially because it's dangerous. Ordinary was safe. But it wasn't living. Do Yoon smiled, the expression transforming his face from the Iron Dragon into just a man who'd found something unexpected and precious in a dying moment at a bar. Then we do it together. Equal partners. Equal partners, Treasure agreed. He pulled her close, his kiss tasting like champagne and victory and new beginnings. Below them, Seoul glittered with life they'd protected. Above them, stars shone in a clear night sky. And in a 4th-floor apartment in Hongdae, Treasure's grandmother's couch would stay empty tonight. Because the bartender who'd saved a dying king had become a queen herself, and her empire was just beginning. The Iron Dragon had 2 heads now. One forged in violence and legacy. One forged in chemistry and justice. Together, they would burn the old world down and build something new from its ashes. Together, they were unstoppable.